Sportswashing is becoming more and more prevalent in English football, so let's talk about it. For a quick definition, sportswashing is a term used to describe the practice of individuals, groups, corporations, or governments using sports to improve reputations tarnished by wrongdoing. A form of propaganda, sportswashing can be accomplished through hosting sporting events, purchasing or sponsoring sporting teams, or participating in a sport. So sportswashing is something I've cared about for a very long time, and it really came to the forefront during the World Cup that just happened in November to December, with Qatar essentially committing sportswashing, using sports to rehabilitate their image as a way to invite the world in to try and show, hey guys, look how amazing we are, when at the same time using a kafala system up until these stadiums were completely used, and even after that, many of the conditions that the workers who helped build the stadiums and the infrastructure for Qatar and the wider Middle East, to be honest, live in horrible conditions. Even behind me you see almost an example of a company which may be embroiled in sportswashing, and to be honest is already sort of sportswashing. So the WWE, there have been rumours that they'll sell to the Saudi Arabian government in an attempt for Saudi Arabia to build their image as, hey guys, look at us, we're this really awesome progressive nation that definitely doesn't journalists and doesn't have a really poor human rights record in relation to like places like Yemen. And even if they didn't sell to the Saudi government, the current head of the company, Vince McMahon, who's just come back to the company, is using a position on top of the company that he basically reinstated himself in, it's a whole other bag of worms, to rehabilitate his image after being accused of several attempts and several cases of sexual harassment, and also using company funds to pay off people who he has sexually harassed or assaulted. Allegedly. Don't want to get sued by Vince McMahon. So, to be honest, these two belts will probably be coming down very, very soon. Speaking of Saudi Arabia, they are the latest high-profile country coming in and using sportswashing in the Premier League. Not just English football, but the Premier League itself, with their purchase of Newcastle. With that, the Saudi Arabian government basically owns Newcastle, and immediately they have been funneling a ton of money into the club, not as much as other clubs had done in the past because of very, very slightly stricter financial fair play rules from the FA, but they've still been doing it, and Newcastle have seen great benefit from it. And that's not to take away from the players and Eddie Howe as a manager. I'm pretty sure if you threw a bunch of money at a bad manager, it wouldn't work. Eddie Howe is a good football manager, so throwing a bunch of money at a really good football manager is obviously going to pay off dividends. And even for the people of Newcastle, I'm sure there are many people in Newcastle who are happy to see that their club is flying high in the Premier League after, for a very long time, sort of struggling there. And, you know, they're competing for top 4 place, which is great for Newcastle fans. And some of them may have reservations about being owned by the Saudi Arabian government and everything that comes with it, but I understand why fans themselves may be like, okay, I don't care what you're saying, we're in the top 4. Sucks to be you. Especially because my team is in League One, so... But I digress from that because it just shows that they have had this image, it's a very positive image of Saudi Arabia built for them, for the people of Newcastle, and yes, again, for Newcastle fans, it's great, but it's even better for the Saudi Arabian government because now they have this large swathe of people, and they probably aren't limited to Newcastle. There's probably people around the world who probably support Newcastle. I'm sure there's a guy in the Philippines who loves Newcastle. And with that, the Saudi Arabian government is getting this really great press from these people, and it helps sweep under the rug all of these other things in relation to Saudi Arabia, such as the of journalists, or such as the Crown Prince, his family, essentially. So, and obviously you can turn around and say, well, football is going towards all the money. This is happening everywhere. And it's true. Man City was an example of sports washing with the Abu Dhabi sheikhs, the Abu Dhabi royal family, essentially not just owning Man City, but owning a lot of clubs across the world. It's scary how many they own. Not just that, obviously you got PSG, which was used to rehabilitate Qatar, which again, it just turned around PSG and French football as a whole, and it's had this massive knock-on effect with French football and television rights, and you know, the whole thing with it now being called Ligue 1 Uber Eats. It's insane. However, it is even more prevalent in English football, because English football is where all the money is at the moment. This is why you see players that would be playing for top 5 teams in any other of the big leagues going to play for like mid-table English teams, because they know they're going to get a ton more money playing for these mid-table English teams. And that's what's attracting even more countries, and not just countries, but companies and individuals to participate in sports washing in England, because they know they have the biggest platform and will likely make the most money. Another example where sports washing may come into play is Liverpool Football Club, a club that has had very strong ties to like working class people, especially as of late, like the last few decades. Very strong ties to the working class, and you know, there are rumour and speculation that Qatar, you know, parts of Qatar might be purchasing Liverpool Football Club. You know, there's been videos of Jurgen Klopp laughing and joking about future transfers. There's been people thinking, oh, how are Liverpool going to afford to spend so much money on Jude Bellingham in the summer? Well, there is this idea that a oil-rich nation will be coming in and purchasing Liverpool Football Club, which, again, in my opinion, is a negative for English football as a whole. Obviously, from a financial perspective, it's great for English football, although it leaves this even bigger gap between the Premier League and the EFL, and you have the whole idea of, okay, now you're going to have to give even bigger parachute packets to clubs that come into the Premier League, which then, if they ever go down into the EFL, there's this huge disparity, and it may kill football in the Premier League, because teams at the bottom of the table are no longer playing for football's sake. They're playing to preserve like 17th place so they don't lose these massive money deals. And that has been an effect from these giant wealthy nations and organisations coming in and being like, okay, we're going to flood the system with money, but that doesn't really get reinvested lower down in the pyramid. It's an example why some people have an issue with like #United, because they've come in, they obviously have a lot more money because they are based on a very successful football channel, coming in with a lot of money, and they're very quickly moving up the pyramid in English football. It's not the same. As far as I know, #United aren't using their football to rehabilitate their images. I don't know them personally, but they're not doing exactly the same as what these major nations are doing, and it's not having the biggest negative effect on lower league football, because in lower league football, actually having something like #United is bringing eyes to lower league football, one could argue. Whereas in the Premier League, it was already one of the best leagues to watch. Now it's just got so much more money thrown at it. This is to say, the influx of sports washing into English football is only going to take away from the soul and heart of English football, which is that football has come to represent the people. It has come to represent the goals and aspirations of regular, ordinary, often working class people. It's why football is kind of seen as this great equalizer, because unlike other sports, unlike things like American football, you don't need to be rich to get into it. Unlike getting into football in the US, you don't need to be rich to get into academies. you can be anyone and get into football, and that's one of the few beautiful things that remain about football. But again, the more and more we pump money into it in an attempt to satiate the egos of rich people, and it's not just Middle Eastern companies, there are individuals who own football clubs who are just bad people. There are organisations and companies that own football clubs that are just pumping out negativity into the world, and you're taking away this connection to the people of the local area or the country these clubs are in, and handing it into the hands of these countries, organisations, individuals at the benefit of oftentimes getting a huge influx of cash, but it comes at almost a soul being lost with football. And in England, I don't think it's going to change. You don't see things happening in England like you see in the rest of Europe. For example, as of recording this, Juventus have been deducted 15 points for capital gains violations. Obviously, they're going to fight it, but in England, you're not going to really see that. I mean, Derby is maybe the most recent exception I saw, but financial fair play rules are skirted around so much in England, especially in the Premier League, especially by these massive clubs owned by these huge companies. You think about City when it came to their dealings around the Champions League, where they were going to be banned. When you look at Chelsea, who recently had a ban on transfers, that's an exception. You oftentimes see things like what happened to City, where they just got away with it. And again, England's financial fair play is very lax compared to a lot of the rest of Europe. And furthermore, you see the Premier League itself making concessions, allegedly, to potential sports washing nations. For example, for Saudi Arabia, concessions allegedly were made for the Saudi Arabia deal to go through. So that's why I think sports washing in English football isn't good. Sports washing in any sport isn't good. Sports washing in fake sports isn't good. And it sadly harms not just the people who love the sport, who love the entertainment in this case, but it hurts the image of the sport itself. When people turn to sports entertainment or turn to football and see, oh, the only successful clubs are the clubs with oil money, the oil money joke, which is prevalent in football, it's sad. Football will go the way of many American sports. Football may end up going the way of the NFL, which is just based on money being pumped into these teams. Football may go the way of the NBA, where it's become a place where you don't get promoted or relegated because all of these rich people own clubs and they refuse to have their teams be promoted or relegated. It's the reason the Super League was a thing, because they refuse to have these teams that they own not be at the very top. They refuse to allow these teams that they own to not be bringing in billions of dollars for them, because they might not be able to hack it in the actual league system. It's sad. It takes away the heart of the sport, and that's why I don't like that there's sports washing in the English football game. You may disagree, and I understand why some people will disagree, but it's just, it feels like something that felt like the heart and soul of English sports is being lost along the way.